I'll give it 1 minute. Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Public Works, Finance, and Safety Committee meeting of Tuesday, January 19, 2021. Roll call, please. We cannot hear anything, Kristen. Okay, try again. Kristen, can you hear me? It's time for roll call.
Now I can, Mayor.
Okay, good. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Yep.
Could you do roll call, please?
Okay. Albertson,
Here.
Bueller,
Here.
Hoyer,
Here.
Pauline, Lallam, absent, Manti,
Here.
Rademski,
Here.
Roby,
Here.
Philhauer,
Here.
Y.
Present.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. I have a motion by Rademski and a second by Bueller. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, and those opposed, oh, go ahead. Aye. Sorry. Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Sorry, I was ready to do roll call. We don't have to do roll call vote when we have a quorum. So the next item now is public input, and this is the time set aside for anyone who wants to make a public comment to step forward and do so, or if you're online, simply state your name and say request permission to speak. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment? Hearing no one, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Have a motion by Hoyer and a second by Rademski. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. The regular agenda is item A, approval of amendment number 2 with Mead and Hunt for the ATY terminal project number 1927 for an increase of $28,342.50 for a new contract amount of $3,262,084.50. A motion by Helene.
Second.
And a second by Bueller. And I will ask the Public Works Director, City Engineer Heath Von Eye to kick this off for us, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll start off by saying we do have a pretty heavy agenda here on the Public Works Finance Safety Committee tonight, but rest assured, Council will take however much time we need on each item. If we happen to not get through them all, every one of these items are on the consent agenda, so we could certainly pull some off of the regular council meeting if we have to at the end of the meeting here, if we don't get to every item. That being said, I'll try to keep my comments as pointed as I can to move through the business. This particular item relates to the new airport terminal and the construction administration contract that we currently have in place with Mead and Hunt. They're our primary consultants on the new terminal project. What this is an amendment to their contract to include testing services. If you recall, on the old airport terminal apron project, we did something very similar for the concrete testing component for that project. We change ordered those services in later on after the construction had started. The reason for this having to be change ordered in now at this point is essentially because when our contract was executed with Mead and Hunt several months back, we simply didn't know the scope of testing that was going to be required, and they therefore did not include this in their original scope of work. So now it's being change ordered in, now that the design's been complete and we're out for, have bid out the construction, which has since commenced as well. So, long story short is that we've got an amendment to their design, their construction administration services to the tune of a little over $28,000. And this will cover soil observations and testing and other construction testing and material inspection and testing on the construction of the new terminal project. We do have our consultant, Mead and Hunt. Mitch Walker from Mead and Hunt is online with us, along with the airport manager, Todd Syrie, and we'd stand by for questions.
All right, thank you. Council, are there any questions? Councilman Vilhauer?
My only question is that this would be subject to the roughly 75-25% match, so we're only liable for roughly 25% of that when the time comes.
Absolutely, it's a great question, and that is correct.
All right, thank you. Other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item B is authorization for the Public Works Director / City Engineer to administratively approve individual change orders up to $20,000 each to be spent from the budgeted contingency funds for the ATY terminal project, project number 1927, bringing cumulative change orders forward for final approval by council. Have a motion by Holeen.
Second.
Second by Rademski. And I will ask the Public Works Director, City Engineer, to describe this for us.
Thank you, Mayor. There are a few components to this that I'd like to highlight. One, that this idea was fostered in part through conversations and recommendations from our consultant, Mead and Hunt, through their tenure of experience on airport projects in other communities. One of the not necessarily issues, but one of the tasks at hand that we're trying to accomplish with this authorization is to keep a timely progression of the work on site and keep it within the terms that we've signed up for with our contractor. When change orders arise on the construction of the new terminal, our contract requires that we respond in a timely manner and actually specifically within 10 days for some of those requests to our general contractor, which is Great Construction. And in order to do that, what this action would do is give some latitude for myself, the City Engineer, Public Works Director, to administratively approve a certain level of change orders. Now, what I want to emphasize here is that this isn't authorizing me to spend more money than was budgeted, because we do have a $400,000 sum of contingency funds that we've already budgeted for this project. So it's allowing staff to administratively work within some confines and some parameters that make sense for us to, in order to expedite some of these change orders as they arise on the project. If you recall, we did bring a smaller change order forward here back a meeting or two ago, and those are the ones that we'd like to approve on an administrative level, and then bring forth a cumulative approval once we've gotten to a point, whether it be on a monthly basis or up to a total sum that the council is comfortable with, but bring those forward for formal action because that step still has to happen in order to subsequently process them through the FAA for their formal approval as well. And again, we have Mead and Hunt, Mitch Walker's online with us, and Todd Syrie, the airport manager, and we'd stand by for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Heath. Any questions, Council? Councilman Roby?
Thank you. Heath, I'm good with this. I'm just curious, is there any magic to the $20,000 number?
That was subjective to consultant's recommendation and staff's recommendation. That could be 10, it could be 40, whatever the council's comfortable with.
Other questions? Councilman Vilhauer?
Similar to what I just asked a while ago, Heath, I'm assuming that whatever change orders that you would be administratively approving would, again, as far as city dollars at risk, would be what, either the 25 or maybe even only a 5% or 6.5%, whatever the figure is, would be the city dollars at, at issue here.
Yes, now there would be some change order requests that may not be eligible for the cost share.
Sure, I understand.
And if, Mitch could maybe chime in on that as well, just based on what he's seen or how those have been handled in the past through his experience.
Yeah, great question. So each individual change order is, it fits between the eligibility requirements of the FAA that we've already processed or that we've already gotten acceptance through. So, typically on sort of a standard building-wide change order, those would be 75%, rough 74.75% eligible. But in some instances, they may very well be 100% eligible. The FAA looks at each individual change that comes in on kind of a spreadsheet basis. They would like to see them, they're brought to them on a cumulative basis, like we're proposing to the council as well. What we would do is we would have, we would lay out the justification of the change order, why we feel that it's justified for funds, and then our determined eligibility number towards that specific change order. As Heath had mentioned, some change orders may be 100% eligible, some may be 0% eligible, but in most part, you can kind of determine that 75% is about right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. For the record, Councilman Lallam has arrived. Councilman Rademski.
On these terminal projects, is there any typical, is there an average of how many change orders you might see on one of these terminal projects?
That's a good question too, Councilman Rademski. I would say that's pretty subjective to the project. And again, I'll let Mitch chime in if he sees any kind of trending with the number of projects they've helped manage, but I'm guessing it's pretty subjective on a per project basis.
Yeah, it is. It tends to be. We've already sort of, considered a couple of, potential changes here at Watertown. And, what we would say is that in all likelihood on a monthly basis, we would get together between, Heath and Todd and myself and review what the monthly changes would be. If there's only one, potentially we roll that into the following month. Usually it's right around the dollar amount, and what we feel like is we feel like that $400,000 contingency value is well over what we would need to take all changes, including owner requested modifications. But in terms of like a general quantity of change orders, it's some are at the request of the TSA, which is what we've seen already. Some would be at the request of the FAA. Some would maybe at the request of Todd and his staff as well, some minor modifications. But we don't foresee any major changes to the work, especially on a new build.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? See none, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item C is approval of a professional services agreement amendment for the design, bidding services, and project administration associated with the Third Avenue roadway improvements, project number 1706, with Infrastructure Design Group, Inc., in the amount of $40,300, bringing the total contract amount to $119,500. Have a motion by Holene.
Second.
And a second by Rademski. And I'll ask Heath to tell us about this one too.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an amendment with our design services with IDG, and we do have Vanessa Victor on the line with us today, along with Justin Peterson, the Assistant City Engineer, for questions here at the end. But generally speaking, what this pertains to is we entered into a design contract with IDG quite some time back for the design of the Third Avenue Bridge, the structure itself. Subsequent to that, we then also expanded their scope of work to include some reconstruction to Third Avenue itself. And what we originally targeted was from Compesca Boulevard east to 3rd Street. And we, in that second contract with IDG, we intended to reconstruct from Compesca to the bridge and then simply mill and overlay from the bridge east to 3rd Street. Now, since we've gotten into the scoping of that work, we've expanded the scope all the more to include reconstructing the entire street from Compesca Boulevard all the way east to 3rd Street. So that's caused their scope of services to be expanded. It's gone from a simple mill and overlay for that portion to a full reconstruct. The other component to this is adding in a mill and overlay and sidewalk and ADA compliance from Compesca Boulevard west to Highway 20. All of which, again, was found to be of necessity during the scoping of the project. So that's what this amendment, generally speaking, helps us to accomplish. And again, Vanessa's online with us today. If we have specific questions, her and I or Justin would be glad to help answer them.
All right, thank you. Questions, council? No questions? Well, okay, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Every single agenda item is Public Works Committee, so I'm just going to be calling on the Public Works Director time after time. So,
Madam Mayor, on the heels of that last item, can I make one quick announcement regarding that bridge? We did just recently find out that the bridge itself, this project, due to the DOT's bidding schedule, we had anticipated constructing that here in 2021, but unfortunately with the bidding schedule and how DOT is managing these structure projects in the Bridge Improvement Grant Program, our project will not get bid until October. So that being said, the structure won't be able to be reconstructed until 2022, but what staff and our consultant are planning to do is shift some of the work, like the mill and overlay from Compesca west to Highway 20, and keep that in 2021's budget, and shift our budget accordingly, and maybe add to that mill and overlay project with some other streets throughout town, and then have Compesca Boulevard east to 3rd Street all included in the DOT's bid. Now, some of that is up in the air yet. We're working through those details with our consultant, and we'll continue to work through them with the DOT as well. But I wanted to make that quick announcement tonight, too, in relation to this action.
thank you. And that, that's probably not all bad because they can get some of the materials on order that might take a long time to come. And if we bid it out in April and we don't have our materials yet in the middle of July, we're kind of running behind. So, yes, Councilman Hoyer.
Heath, just to make sure I understand it. So right now we're looking at doing some mill and overlay work before we start doing the bridge work right now?
Correct. We're entertaining phasing the 3rd Avenue components out so we can do some mill and overlay yet this year.
Okay, if we do that, are we going to have any heavy equipment going in on top of that freshly done road, or do we have another route for that to get in there so it can work on the bridge?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think with the limits and the access from Compesca Boulevard east, we would give the contractor on the bridge project plenty of access without compromising Compesca Boulevard west to Highway 20.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next item is D, authorization for the mayor to sign all necessary documents related to the professional services agreement for environmental monitoring and reporting for the Watertown Regional Landfill with Houston Engineering, Inc., HEI, in the amount of $57,455 for 3 years. Motion by Helene and a second by Lallam. Go ahead, Heath, tell us about this one, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is pertaining to the ongoing monitoring that we're required to do through our permit with South Dakota DENR. We have a monitoring plan that is in place and administered by staff, reported by staff, but then subsequently assisted by this consulting services with a professional in the industry that has the abilities to meet and help us with those testing requirements. Mike Berger, the wastewater solid waste superintendent, is online with us, and perhaps a representative from Houston Engineering that we could help answer any questions. But this would be for a 3-year contract for their services, and helps us meet those annual reporting requirements to South Dakota DNR.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments? Pretty straightforward. All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item E is approval of construction change order number 1, final, with Dunick, Inc. for the 2020 PMP-A milling and AC mat construction, project number 2002, for an increase of $1,659.08, bringing the total contract cost to $945,594.08. Have a motion by Vilhauer and a second by Helene. And Heath, why don't you tell us about this, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is a closeout of one of our 2020 projects. This is the mill and overlay from 2020 that was performed by Dunick Incorporated, and included a series of locations throughout town where the streets were milled and overlaid with a new asphalt mat. And this is what we would typically call a partial mill and overlay, usually about a 2-inch mill of the current asphalt surface, and then coming in and just simply paving that 2 inches back over with a new asphalt mat. Those streets we select, of course, are what we feel fitting for an application like that. We don't necessarily want to mill and overlay a street that's completely gone as far as the structural capacity goes. So that's what this project generally pertains to. I want to commend staff on this one. There were several dynamics with this project, like we see with a lot of our asphalt paving projects when we're dealing this amount of quantity. And we did discover there were some density discrepancies that didn't quite meet specification. They weren't bad enough that we had to reject the work, but they were bad enough to where we wanted to apply a price reduction on the asphalt that we received. And so Justin reviewed the DOT specs that we use on our projects to see what kind of an appropriate reduction would be for the lower density parameter that wasn't met. So that was one of the reasons this change order came in fairly small, is because there's some reductions in the overall final changeover here for some of the work that didn't quite meet specification, but again, we felt comfortable enough accepting with a price deduction. So I just wanted to commend staff on that and point that fact out. And so it is a nominal change order of just over $1,600 on nearly $1 million contract for the 2020 mill and overlay.
Very good. Questions or comments? None. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item F is rescind the temporary suspension of Resolution 20-48 utility rate increase, specifically for Dakota Tube, Inc., reinstating all appropriate charges and user rates retroactive to the implementation date of said resolution. Have a motion by Hoyer and a second by Vilhauer. And Heath, want to tell us about this, please?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. This is on the heels of, I believe it was right at the last meeting here, we took action to withhold or temporary postpone the implementation of the new wastewater rates for one of our businesses, specific business in town that happens to be one of our highest significant industrial users for the wastewater system. That company had approached us with questions on the rates, how they were established, what kinds of information was considered in the significant industrial user rate category, and how that compares to our commercial and residential rate establishments. And after last council meeting, we subsequently met with the committee that was part of the wastewater and solid waste rate study, and met with our consultant, AE2S. Ryan Graff, specifically from AE2S, is with us online here this afternoon. And we talked through some of the details on how those rates are established and what criteria are considered, and what's common and customary for communities when considering altering rates for extremely high users. And through those discussions, we found that the way we've got this rate set up for the city of Watertown as a result of this rate study seems to be precisely in line with where we should be as a community. It's not out of the norm for what we would see in other communities. This particular significant industrial user, I believe, contributed about 1% of our overall wastewater treatment flows. And it takes typically for a community to consider any shift in a rate up to a 5, maybe 10% contributing factor from any one user before they start shifting their rate structure for that one user. So again, we don't feel that we're outside the bounds of what you normally see in other communities with the way we've set this rate up. That information has subsequently been passed on to the business owner through a one-on-one meeting with them and with staff, and explained this process and some of the details that went into the rate establishment. Subsequent to that meeting, it's staff's recommendation and the committee's recommendation to keep the rate as was designed through our new rate study, and go ahead and implement it effective per the resolution 20-48 when all new wastewater rates became effective. Our consultant Ryan Graff is online, along with Mike Berger, and then engineering staff Justin and Marcy as well. And any one of us would be glad to help answer any questions that anybody might have. I believe the property owner was going to be online too, if anybody had any questions for him or if he'd like to speak this evening.
All right. Thank you, Heath. Councilman Roby?
I've previously and will continue to recuse myself from this issue.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, Council?
Is someone from Dakota Tube on the line?
I don't see them, but
After I said that, I'm not seeing them either.
if
Mayor.
someone from Dakota Tube is online, if you would just please state your name if you're wanting to say something. I don't think so.
Okay.
Councilman Vilhauer?
I'll just make a comment because I was the one that, along with Councilwoman Manti, brought this forward last time. After meeting with the staff and the consultants last week, I have to agree with this. When looking at it only being a 1% of our total discharge versus Ryan's comment or consultant's comments about it, unless we see a 5 to 10% customer, we should not be using a different rate. I had a subsequent conversation with Mr. Steinbauer at Dakota Tube. He's not on the line, but I will try to paraphrase what he told me. He agrees with we should not have a preferential rate. He was still concerned that there were errors or subjectivity in the study that he disagreed with. I will vote in favor of this reinstatement, but I guess I would just ask a question. Let's say that he does pursue this and does consult with whether staff or our consultant and does make a strong enough case. Can that still be brought forward at a later time for reconsideration? Or I guess just procedure, just asking what their options are without muddying the waters totally for our staff.
Sounds like a good question for the city attorney, Matt. Can they bring it back later?
I guess I don't see why not. If new facts come to light down the road that require or would encourage the council to take a different action, I don't see any reason why they couldn't do that.
Okay.
Yeah. there's-
Thanks, Matt. And I explained to Mr. Steinbauer that, you know, we are a policy-setting group as council members. We have to rely upon what our consultants and staff are telling us. And he understood that, but again, had some concerns that there were mistakes or things that he disagreed with you know, but I do support reinstating the previous new charges.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilman Bueller?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to say, too, I think that we would set a precedent for the future for any potential high-volume users coming down the road, too. So I'm in favor of this as well.
Right. Anyone else? The consultant was very methodical and logical in how the rates were established, so that was good. All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item G is authorization for the mayor to sign all necessary documents related to the detour agreements associated with the Highway 212 Phase 2, project number 1802, with the South Dakota Department of Transportation. Have a motion by Holeen,
Second.
a second by Lallam. All right, Heath, want to tell us about this, please?
Absolutely, Mayor. This would be in relation to the Highway 212 Reconstruct Project, Phase 2. And the DOT is simply proceeding, checking off some boxes to get that project ready and everything in place for it. One of those components, obviously, being an appropriate detour route to route traffic in an appropriate manner. The city entered into a similar detour agreement with the DOT for Phase 1. I will share my screen here and show a map of the proposed detour route. This would be for the proposed truck detour. Of course, using the south, what we otherwise call the south bypass around the south end of town. Similar to what we utilized for Highway 212 Phase 1 project that went from Highway 20, roughly Highway 20 east to Highway 81. Same truck detour route would be proposed for Phase 2, which goes, generally speaking, from Highway 81 east all the way to 19th Street. And then the other portion of this is right here. This is more of what we would call the more localized traffic detour route. You'll see 19th Street here on the right-hand side of the map, and Highway 81 towards the left-hand side, and 212 running east and west across the middle. Now, Phase 2 of the Highway 212 Reconstruct project is meant to be broken into two different phases. Phase 1 of that project will require a detour route, as highlighted, which will include 4th Avenue South and 13th Street East. They'll also have a business detour. That portion of that will be on City Street, Jensen Avenue. The other portion will be on private property through the mall parking lot, roughly speaking. And they will enter into a private detour agreement with the mall property owners for that segment of this route. And then Phase 2 of this project, from 13th Street East to 19th, they're planning to construct that, what we would say, under traffic. They'll have head-to-head traffic on one side of the road while they're constructing the other half, and then flip-flop the traffic and the construction halfway through the project. So 4th, 13th, and Jensen, along with the south bypass, are what this detour route would include, and the city would be signing off on. Now, when we execute this agreement, what we do is the DOT does an assessment of the streets along with the street superintendent and engineering staff, so that we're all on the same page of what the current condition of the streets look like. And then if any damages that look like they're due to the additional traffic would occur as a result of the construction project, the DOT then asks their contractor to perform any repairs to our streets as we deem necessary. which I'll note that we did find necessary on the last phase, and they did perform some correction measures on our streets under that phase. So, all that being said, Justin Peterson is on the line with us here, the Assistant City Engineer, who's helping facilitate these agreements.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments from the council? Councilman Vilhar?
Looking at the agreement, I think section 7 of that agreement, there's reference to 13th Avenue East in there. I think it should be 13th Street. Correct? So you may want to tweak that document.
We can make that correction. Thank you.
Okay. Will this be disseminated to the public in the very near future now, so people are aware? Because I know there's going to be people questioning in a hurry or quickly where the detours are going to go next year.
Yes, we can do our part on the local level with that. Of course, we'd rely on the DOT to help disseminate that as well, since it's directly related to their project. But anything we can do to help facilitate that information sharing, we would definitely help out.
Thank you. Councilman Bueller?
Thank you, Mayor. Heath, what is the projected completion date for this new renovation?
You know, I don't have the answer to that off the top of my head. I don't know if Justin, if you would know that.
I don't know the completion date. It is scheduled for 2022 construction.
I would anticipate that they would be able to get that done within one construction season. Phase 1 was done under one construction season that turned kind of ugly on them with the high water and the bridge and the work that we had to do with the structure. But still, generally speaking, would have been done under one construction season, so I suspect the same for this one. So starting early 2022 and ending sometime at the end of that year.
We don't have any bridge issues with this one. So
No.
that'll be most helpful. But just one other question, just out of curiosity, help me out here. That western section where we have to detour around that segment, what's the reasoning why they can't do one side and then the other, to leave that open like they're doing on the eastern segment? Just curious.
No, that's a good question. I would only be speculating, but there might have been different challenges with the alignment and property ownership and configurations and utility work and all those things combined that maybe made it a full-blown closure, the simplest route to go. But I'd just be speculating. That's a good question, and I did not ask the DOT of. I don't know, Justin, if you know either.
I do not know.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Sure. Councilman Roby?
Just on that topic, you know, if you look at what they were approving, there was a truck over with detour layout. So you're still going to have some access locally to a lot of the businesses on the highway.
Right, and when they've got that area that's going to be shut down, they'll have routes in and signage to the businesses so people can still get to the businesses. And it's too much information to put all that into the detour route agreement, but they'll have an extensive plan for that.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
If I could add another little nugget of information related to that project, I did just receive an email where they're having a pre-construction meeting for the storm sewer work that's related to Highway 212 Phase 2. That is occurring here in 2021. So the community will see some construction on Highway 212, but it's in relation specifically to storm sewer improvements that the DOT is installing ahead of the big project that's coming in 2022. You'll see those storm sewer improvements at Highway 81 and south on Highway 81, and then east of there along 212. And then way on the east end of the project along 19th Street, you'll see some construction in that area as well. Those are the two primary areas where there's a lot of storm sewer improvements that needed to be accomplished. and that's a phase that the DOT is bidding out, or already has maybe bid out. They're having a pre-con meeting soon here for.
Yep, the preparation. So they're doing the receiving pipes so that when they do the construction with the road, they'll have something to connect to. It's pretty complicated, but a very much needed project. Any other questions? We already voted, didn't we? Okay. Item H is authorization for the mayor to sign an addendum to the development agreement for East Park Second Edition. A motion by Holeen and a second by Radomski. Heath, want to tell us about it, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. This addendum was brought forward in relation to a recent action that was voted down as far as issuing a certificate of completion for the public improvements along 26th Street, north of Trav's Outfitters in that commercial subdivision. What we discovered was that there was a requirement in the development agreement that required all sidewalks to be installed with the public improvements within that commercial subdivision. We've since circled back with the developers. There's two developers at hand here for two different components of the same area, and that's why there's another action item on the agenda subsequent to this one. But they both are pretty much addressing it in the same manner. What we proposed back to the developers and that staff has helped facilitate here is an amendment to their development agreement that would not require them to install all sidewalks at this time, and instead allow them to pass the sidewalk responsibility onto the subsequent lot buyers or the subsequent developers of the lots, which is what we've seen happen at Trav's Outfitters, for example, one of the developed lots in this subdivision. And we'll also see with the new hotel that's being built, where they will be building their sidewalk adjacent to their lot. That's one of the major changes that this amendment would accomplish. And I was trying to think in summary. The other one was in relation to the sidewalk ramps. We did require those to still be installed by the developer so that the ramps and the detectable warning panels and things of that nature are put in with the curb and gutter requirements, so that they're done so in an engineered fashion so that the slopes and things like that are all installed appropriately. So that still would be a requirement of the developers to install all handicap ramps for the sidewalk at the appropriate intersections at the locations shown on the approved plans. And seems like I'm forgetting another detail here, but Urban Planner Brandy Hanton has helped facilitate these amendments, and she's online to help answer any questions and or help talk through any of the discussion that we've had with the developers for that matter.
All right.
Yeah, and Heath, are you okay with me jumping in?
Yes, please. I am forgetting an item, Brandy. Which one was it?
So along with this addendum would allow the developers to pass off the responsibility of installing the sidewalks to the successors of interest of those lots, but then also the city will still reserve the right to call in a sidewalk at any time. And then also we have the language specifically stating that all the remaining sidewalks shall be installed by the developer on or before 5 years, because not only for East Park are we looking at this as a policy for East Park Second and Morris First, but also just commercial development in general. And so that after 5 years, the developer will be required to install the remaining sidewalks earlier on either or both sides of the public right-of-way when the linear feet of uninstalled sidewalk is 30% or less of the total linear feet of sidewalk required on each side. And that's kind of a mouthful, but it just, so then within, say it develops up to 30%, the sidewalks are installed, it just gives us that right to have a complete sidewalk network that we don't have to necessarily wait the 5 years.
Yes, thank you for that, Brandy. Essentially, it includes the requirement for the developer to install sidewalk at either a 5-year time span, all of it needs to be installed, or at a point when it's 70% developed and there's only 30% remaining. Theory being, we'd like to see those gaps closed rather than waiting for those lots to sell, you know, in indeterminate amount of time later on. And we'd rather get that sidewalk connectivity established either within 5 years or at the point when the lots are 70% developed, whichever comes first.
Seems reasonable. Any questions or comments? Councilman Hoyer?
I guess I would just say, as long as we have that backstop, and this is exclusively for commercial development, I think that's the only way that really works. So it helps too that Willow Creek already has the sidewalk to get people out there at least, and once we get that commercial part, great. So good work on putting a backstop on it. That fills in a lot of those gaps, so thank you.
Councilman Vilhauer?
Brandy, are the developers on board with this revised agreement?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Question I've got is, I know we've talked about this, so I don't want to muddy the waters, but originally it was 3 years from the date, from 2017 to get the sidewalks installed. Now we're granting them essentially an additional almost 5 years to get the project done. Are we okay being that lenient in our time allowance now? I guess I'm just asking if that 5 years is amenable to all of us.
I think as a policy, we would want to, you know, stick to the 5 years. But now these guys, and actually, this development agreement allowed them 3 years to install the public infrastructure, which isn't typical to our policy now. And actually, per ordinance, that they have to have it installed within 2 years. So technically, this development is getting 8 years. But going forward, we would just want to stick to the 5.
And if I could, Madam Mayor?
Sure.
Another distinguishing point, Councilman Vilhauer, to your question might be that the 3 years was part of the original development agreement, which included all sidewalk with all public improvements. So the streets, the water, the sewer, the storm sewer, all of that with the sidewalks was supposed to be accomplished within 3 years. And I just wanted to point that out, that it's not out of the ordinary on our other development agreements to see the sidewalk be passed on, in some cases without a hard deadline to have it complete, because it does simply go with the sale of the lots and however amount of time that takes to accomplish. So I do like the fact that we at least have a hard deadline in here, if that helps the discussion any.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask the city attorney if this eliminates the city's ability to order sidewalks in at any time if the council felt it was necessary. Is that power gone if this agreement is approved? Matt?
Hi there, I'm just pulling up the agreement here again. I believe we left in the language that explicitly retained our ability to do that. Is that correct, Brandy?
Yep, that is. So it's still under B6, B2. We still do state in there that the city also reserves the right to order all sidewalks be installed at any time.
Okay,
And
so the allowance for it to be 2 years, as our ordinance says for new subdivisions, and expanding that out to 5 for commercial, do you think we should change our ordinance? Why? Because how are we going to remember that it's different from our ordinance? Is that something that the council is interested in discussing? Our ordinance says everything, all the public improvements have to be done within 2 years. And this would give them 5 years for just the sidewalk, but everything else is 2 years. And only in commercial zones. Something to think about. I'm not pushing for a change to the ordinance. I mean, you have flexibility, but I don't know, maybe a note in the development standards to help people remember. Because normally you would just read the ordinance and that's what we follow. And this is different. And if it's not recorded anywhere but in council minutes, how does the staff remember that? Councilman Hoyer?
Well, I think that's a great question. I would say, kind of like Heath was kind of getting at, that in general, no, we wouldn't want to go down this route. I think this is just us seeking a resolution to it. I think we'd hope that in the future, if folks get a tract of land and set an agreement with us, that they have a plan in place to fill it a little sooner than this one went. I guess I don't know all the details of why this one's taken the time it has to fill in, but personally, I like how we have it in our ordinance, and then I don't love that we're doing essentially an amendment for this one, but the only reason for me that this sits okay is just that we are putting that hard backstop on it that says, look, get it done at this period. But you're right, we need a good mechanism to keep track of this so we actually do enforce it when that time comes.
Well, it's hard to remember, and especially if there's nothing solid in our design standards or in our ordinance, for the staff to just remember to do this is a challenge, because this is different from our ordinance, and it's different from our design standards. Just a suggestion. And Brandy said she wanted to make it the new template, and that's kind of why I'm saying this. If this is just to resolve an issue on this one development, fine. We don't have commercial developments very often. This, in fact, can't even think of any others. We have residential developments all the time, but we don't have big commercial developments like this very often. So this is kind of unique. And this pretty well takes the whole subdivision, fills it out, right?
That is correct, with this action and then the subsequent one with the
Yeah.
Morris portion.
Right. Yeah, so there's another action following this. It's going to be the same. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so the motion is to sign the addendum for East Park Second Edition. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, I is very similar. Authorization for the mayor to sign an addendum to the development agreement for Morris First Edition. Motion by Holleen and second by, was it Vilhar? Okay, Heath, you want to tell us about this one now?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Generally speaking, East Park, the previous action was, again, generally speaking, primarily along 8th Avenue. Morris Edition is generally speaking and related to property along 26th Street. And this is identical. It's in the same, what we would look at as being part of the same commercial subdivision. And we're looking to apply the same amendments to the Morris's development agreement to be the exact same as what we just did for East Park subdivision, which would require them the latitude, or give them the latitude to pass the sidewalk installation onto the property buyers, and also put a 5-year time limit or 70% development limitation before they would be required to install all sidewalk. Also, they'd be required to install the corner ramps, the curb ramps, intersection ADA ramps that are on the approved construction plans.
All right, thank you. Any questions on this, council? Is there anything different on this than the last one?
There is not. I do have a follow-up question when we're done with action on this, though.
Okay. No questions from the council? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Heath?
So the Morris family has, in review of this amendment, this is the actual portion of the subdivision that we turned down the certificate of completion for here a month or two back because we found that the sidewalk was an issue and hadn't been completed. What they are asking of us, though, is that staff bring forward that certificate of completion here in the near future, and that we include the required sidewalk ramps as part of the punch list items before we do the resolution of acceptance. Now, if you remember, the certificate of completion initiates a 1-year warranty, and that's where the developer would like to get this to a point of initiating that 1-year warranty. And then that gives us 12 months of warranty. And then we perform another inspection, make sure they've addressed all punch list items, make sure there aren't any warranty issues to address. And then we issue the resolution of acceptance after that 12 months is up. So they're simply asking that we include the remaining corner sidewalk ramps that they're required to install in our punch list items and bring that certificate of completion forward again for action here in the next meeting or the next couple of meetings. And I'm okay with that from a staffing standpoint because we do have that 12-month window. If they for some reason don't get all the corner ramps installed, we can hold off and would not issue a resolution of acceptance until that work is done. Just like if there's any warranty issues that might come up on the project, we'd have those addressed too before the resolution of acceptance is brought forward.
There's not an item for this?
There's not. I was just simply looking for some direction if the council would be willing to entertain that certificate of completion again, if I ever bring that back.
So you're asking to deviate from the addendum they just approved?
The addendum does require them to install the corner sidewalk ramps. This would be one way to get the warranty time clock moving and allow them to install those corner sidewalk ramps immediately in the spring.
Councilman Hoyer?
Is there warranty on those sidewalk curb ramps?
Yes.
So does the clock start over then once they put those in?
For that.
We could make that a condition at the time of certificate of completion if the council felt that was appropriate.
Well, I definitely think that's appropriate. You want that to go through a winter, because winter does tricks to concrete.
I think that's kind of my big concern with it is I just kind of feel like we can issue a certificate of completion when they actually complete. So that's at least my view on it, that that kind of motivates getting those curb ramps done so that we can just do it all at once. But I understand too, if the road's already built, that the clock's already going on that for them, so two sides to it.
Yeah, and staff would be more than happy to facilitate either way. We just thought we'd present that as an option before bringing it forward per the developer's request. I know that that's where they have interest to see that warranty time clock start as soon as it could.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that? There is no motion on the floor, and not hearing a lot of support for that request.
I guess my silence, what really is one of support of Heath's recommendation. Now, relative to once the sidewalks are put in at some point down the road, I think we definitely want to have a warranty period following that. But I'm in support of your suggestion, Heath.
Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I was the same way. I apologize for staying silent. I actually think if our Public Works Director wants to bring it, at least we should have that discussion and, you know, learn more and make that decision at that point. So yes, I would be fine if we were to bring this back.
Well, it's now. He's talking about signing it now, right?
I would bring that back as a subsequent action at the next meeting.
Okay.
Bring the formal certificate of completion at the next meeting. And again, to be specific here, this is in only relation to the curb ramps, the corner ramps that the developer's required to install.
Councilman Bueller?
He was before me.
He already spoke once, though.
Yeah.
So-
Sorry, pal.
You got priority, you're good.
Thanks, Mayor. No, I think it's a good idea. Thanks.
Councilman Hoyer?
All I was going to say is, Heath, if we go down that route, just put a backstop on the corner curb or corner ramps, just so it doesn't become something that keeps getting kicked down the road.
Yeah,
Just make sure we have a stop on it.
That's my concern, too. This should not be precedent setting. I think, you know, those should go in with the curb and gutter. If they forget, you know, it just, I don't want to keep giving them get out of jail free.
I would agree, Mayor, and I appreciate those sentiments from the council as well. That's something that staff and I are keenly aware of on new processes and new subdivisions that we're part of from start to finish. Those are definitely things that we will have on the radar to check off all along the way. Again, the hard stop here, I would reiterate, is our resolution of acceptance. If they don't have those done, we've got that as the hard stop to say we're not issuing the resolution of acceptance until those ramps are in. So we do have that as a hard stop at the end here.
Okay. Councilman Roby?
Is anything we just decided contradictory to what's in writing?
I would say that what was decided is we made a requirement of the developer to put in the curb ramps, the corner ramps. What we're allowing here is there some latitude to do that within the warranty period, the 12-month warranty period. Normally, they would be in at the certificate of completion. Because of how this subdivision has progressed and the developer and their engineer did not, and frankly city staff for that matter, didn't realize these corner ramps and the sidewalk were all part of the development agreement. This is just one way to get the brunt of the other public infrastructure improvements underway for a 12-month warranty. So it just gives them more flexibility to get that done within that warranty period instead of up front before the certificate of completion.
Councilman Albertson?
Thanks, Mayor. So Heath, they're not in any major time frame on this. It doesn't have to have something done right away. So in the next 2 weeks would be good.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Manti?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify again that if they want to put the sidewalk ramp or the ramps in the warranty period, we're actually saying that once those sidewalk ramps are in, those trigger a new 1-year warranty? Did we say that?
Just for the ramp portion. I mean,
Right.
Heath was saying he could do that. Otherwise, they'd have a less than a 1-year warranty period.
Well, that's my concern. I wanted to make sure that the ramps, that everything that's constructed we have the full 1-year warranty to make sure they work.
I agree with
I mean,
that.
so I don't, yeah. So you can go ahead and have them constructed during the warranty period for the sidewalks, but I want these individual ramps, in my opinion, to have a 1-year warranty as well, even if it's not the same 1 year, I guess is what I'm thinking.
Right, just a little bit complicated for the staff to coordinate all that. We'll have a second acceptance of the ramps after, and then should put pretty boldly on the certificate of acceptance that it does not include the ramps, which haven't met their 1-year requirement until, and then you can fill in the date. But they aren't going to build them now. They'll build them in the spring, so they would fail immediately unless they did all kinds of gyrations to keep them warm.
Right. So if we can do that, then I'm very comfortable with this. But I want to make sure the ramps get a test run.
Yeah. All right. Conference has a hand up. Oh, is it?
Sorry, that's
Oh.
me. I was creating other meetings, so I'm logged in under conference. I'll switch that for the council meeting. But so the developer, Kathleen Morris, had emailed and said that her and as well as Coho, John Holman, would plan to get those ramps installed in the spring. So really, maybe there isn't a huge time difference where if we just wait to bring the acceptance and after those are installed.
I would prefer that. I think that's cleaner. Then the whole project has one warranty period instead of breaking up into sub-warranty periods for different pieces of the project.
Right, and we could circle back with the developers too, but that was something that she asked Heath to bring forward to council to see if they could get 26th Street accepted, and then get those ramps installed as soon as the weather permits this spring. But it seems like everyone would feel more comfortable to wait until they are actually installed.
Well, I think the council was willing to consider it. you know, can see it from both directions. They've already installed the road. They forgot to install the sidewalk part of it, like ramps, when they did it, and they asked for acceptance. And by then, it was too late to put ramps in, apparently. Councilman Hoyer?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think there's willingness on it because it's kind of like forcing them to put their road through a whole nother cycle. So it's understanding that, look, they already made it. They've put it through, they want to get it through 1 year. They're already in a winter right now, so that could cover them appropriately for it. But I think that's kind of the wiggle room on it a little bit. But we, at least Councilwoman Manti and I would like to get a full year on those curbs, at least. Just, that's the right thing to do because that's what we would normally do. So if they're amenable to waiting, great. But I think there is some openness to working with them if they want to try and get the road this year, just contingent on those curbs getting done too.
All right. Anyone else? Is it clear enough for you?
Yeah, we could gladly take that information back to the developer and essentially pose that option to them. You know, either wait and do it all in the spring or have two separate warranties, one for 90% of the public improvements that would start as soon as we bring this certificate of completion back, and then a second one for the curb ramps once they're accomplished in the spring, you know, summertime, whenever they're complete, start a new warranty for that. And, you know, Brandy's right. The spring, when they get them installed, is not too far off here. And maybe they'll be amicable to go ahead and go that route. Staff would be happy to facilitate it either way. I don't like setting a precedent for taking components out of the certificate of completion and putting them in the warranty period. But again, under these circumstances with this project, I felt it was worthy of the ask that the developer had presented to us, and thought we'd carry it on to the council.
Well, and
or the Public Works Committee.
we did, I mean, we made others wait, you know, and they ended up doing it all at once on other projects, so with the same kind of deal. All right. Is there any old business? Any new business? All right, we will not be going into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2, and there being no further business, I declare the meeting adjourned. We'll be back at 5:30 for the council meeting.